Have you ever pondered about if it's possible to hunt the moose, the world's biggest deer and the biggest mammal in the north, with a suppressed subsonic 22 LR? If not, I hope you're interested, because we will find out today. So I will perform several tests on moose parts today with the 22 LR suppressed subsonic, and we will have a look how good it works, how well it penetrates. But before we do that, I want to explain a little bit why I am doing that and the theory behind it. I need to give a trigger warning for this video, because we will not only see animal parts and do shooting, we also need to talk about what is needed to end the life of an animal reliable. So for people who are not used to it, that could sound unfamiliar. This video is really mainly intended for hunters who are used to the things, who know the things, and who want to educate themselves a little bit further by watching it. So I would recommend, if you are not used to that topic, you shouldn't watch the video. So first of all, why is it interesting at all? Because I don't know any country where that would be legal. And actually I don't think there any country exists where that would be legal. But the aspect behind this, that if you think of a little bit romantical, traditional wilderness life, where someone is living like deep in the forest and has everything in the backpack, the 22 LR would be actually a pretty interesting rifle for living. And the reasons for that are pretty profane, because when you look at the bullet of a 308 Winchester, just one bullet weighs around 25 grams. If you look at a shotgun bullet, 1270, that normally weighs about 50 grams already. So, and think of carrying ammunition, it gets pretty heavy. When you carry 20 rounds of 308 Winchester, you already have half a kilogram of ammunition, and if you carry 20 rounds of shotgun ammunition, you already have 1 kilogram of ammunition. And the 22 LR is much smaller. One bullet of the 22 LR just weighs around 3.5 grams. So 50 bullets of it, the whole package, just weighed 180 grams. If it would be possible to hunt the moose with a 22 LR, and let's say you need 2 bullets, you just end up with 7 grams of ammunition you need for that moose. While with the 308, even if you just need 1 bullet, which would be normal, you need 25 grams. If you count, you only eat moose a whole year. You need about, of course that's just an estimation, plus minus 7 mooses in the year to satisfy your calorie needs only with a moose. So that would be equal to 14 bullets you would need to carry for 1 year. So you see, by that calculation it would be easily possible to carry the ammunition for the whole life with you. But of course that's all pretty unrealistic scenario, but I still find it quite interesting and fascinating. So, and also if you think about you're just perhaps 1 month in the forest like I do, you can still carry a lot of ammunition, so you can hunt a lot of small game. For example, if I shoot a small tufted duck with a 308 Winchester, which I do, I lose 25 grams, or I need to carry 25 grams for that tufted duck. But that tufted duck has perhaps 200 grams of eatable meat, not much more. So it's much more worth to shoot that duck or other small game with the 22 LR. So that's the reason why it is interesting with the 22 LR. Besides that, of course, it's a very popular poacher weapon. And because, of course, poachers do not talk a lot about their results, and of course it's not good what they do, it's questionable how practical possible it is, and I'm interested in that. And the reason why I'm talking only about subsonic ammunition is it has a little bit several aspects. First of all, when you shoot supersonic ammunition with a silencer on the 22LR, you still need ear protection, because the passing of the sound barrier is by far the loudest noise then, not the gases which expand, because the silencer keeps that very good away. But when you shoot it subsonic, you don't need ear protection anymore. It's still pretty loud, like you hear it pretty far. It's not like that it just makes poof and you don't hear anything. That's not true. Like you can easily hear it several hundred meters. But the suppressed subsonic 22LR sounds in a way then that you don't necessarily recognize it as a shot. That's a pretty interesting aspect of it. That's why it's so favorite with poachers. A favorite combination for poachers. And then there's a second reason. If you look at the supersonic loads of the 22LR, they normally have around 390 meters per second. Of course, plus minus a lot. And I know there exist like also pretty far loads with up to 500 meters per second, but they have special disadvantages, so I don't mention them here. So normally you have the standard ammunition, which is 300 to 330 meters per second, so subsonic. And then you have the normal load ammunition or high velocity ammunition. Not normal load, high velocity ammunition, which is like 370 to 390 meters per second. And I think that ammunition is pretty useless, because when you are just slightly above the barrier of sound, you get a lot of external ballistic disadvantages. Because the resistance when you're over the barrier of sound and just slightly gets very, very high. And that reduces accuracy, and of course it reduces the speed of the bullet much faster. With 390 meters per second it's a little bit better, but the bullet slows down pretty fast. And the closer it comes to the barrier of sound, so these 335 meters per second, depending on altitude and depending on pressure from the air and depending on the temperature, of course. But when you come closer to the barrier of sound, the resistance gets much, much higher, very, very high. And also you get more turbulences during flight. So you lose very fast this velocity, which is over the barrier of sound. That's disadvantage number one. And disadvantage number two is also because 22LR is normally just a lead bullet without a coat, without a copper coat. It's not very precise manufactured. So the unevenness of the bullet comes much more into play when you are over the barrier of sound, like slightly over, like these 100 meters per second over. And that leads to a much lower accuracy than you have when you stay below barrier of sound. And I think everyone who owns a 22LR and tested ammunition noticed that it's more difficult to find a precise hyper-velocity ammunition than a standard velocity ammunition, which is precise. And that's also exactly the reason why we have so much standard velocity ammunition out there. It's not advertised as subsonic because the marketing is not focusing on the subsonic aspect. It's focusing basically that ammunition is more precise and more suitable for a 22LR. Another reason why I want to do that is because sometimes the 22LR is not considered as such a serious weapon. And also sometimes the weapon handling lacks a carefulness because people think it's not so dangerous. But that's not true. When you look at the facts, of course, a 308 Winchester has around 3,500 to 4,000 joules when it exits the muzzle of the barrel. And when you look at the 22LR subsonic, you perhaps have 200 to 300 joules, so much, much less. But still, that is quite a lot of energy. And especially because two more factors come into play. The 22LR has a much smaller diameter than a 308, so the energy gets spread on a smaller amount. So when you look at the thermal ballistics, the 22LR penetrates pretty serious, so it goes pretty deep. And that's just because of the smaller diameter, but not only. The second reason is because even if it's just a lead bullet, it doesn't have any core which is holding it. At that speed, the lead bullet is not expanding, so it stays at the small diameter. And when you compare an expanded 308, the square surface of an expanded 308 bullet, to the not expanded 22LR bullet, you see that I didn't make the calculation, but then you see that the energy when the bullet hits something and the energy which is transferred to the object which it hits is not much smaller on the area than on the 308 because of that expansion. That might be now a little bit difficult to understand, but when I push with my finger somewhere with the same force than like with my flat hand, the impact, the force I put per square area, per area, is much higher just with my finger. So perhaps that demonstrates it a little bit. Not the best explanation. The video should have continued where I talk how to end the life of the animal. But during editing I noticed that topic is very complex and the whole video gets way too long and stretched. So I decided to skip the part. Also because my English language skills are not really sufficient to find the appropriate words for describing the things properly. So I just present the result. With the 22LR you only want to hit the brain and nothing else. So let's continue with the action. So the first thing we test is a 10 centimeter block of pine wood, which is dry and frozen. So as we see here, the bullet was not exiting this massive block, but it's also pretty fat wood. Because actually in the past I often saw bullets going through 10 centimeters of pine wood, but here's was not the case. So the next thing we test is the shoulder of an adult male moose. The bone is pretty thin here, and here we have a thicker part. Perhaps we get that also. Let's see. So we made 3 shots. One is here and went through pretty easily. Another one is here and went also through pretty easily. I tried to hit that part with 2 shots. But actually it looks like, yeah, the 2 shots are a little bit too high. So let's try it a third time. Okay, so 1 shot is here and 1 shot is here. Now I'm a little bit too low, but it easily went through. Not any problem at all. Okay, it was not the thick part, but let's try something else. So the next part is the lower leg of the moose, and we try to penetrate through that very thick bone. This bone is really thick. It's of course, there's just a mark in the middle, but the walls are really thick. So let's try it. Okay, it somehow just hit the side, but still it fractured the bone, which is pretty impressive. But because of the strong winds, the bullet was pushed to that right side here. To that side. I will try it now again. Okay, because of the wind, the first bullet was again too much on the right, but then I hit exactly the center, and already with the first bullet the bone was fracturing again, and with the second bullet it was just completely fractured. So you see that even that thick bone is not really stopping that bullet. Okay, now we come to the most interesting thing. The adult moose head, it's a male. It was hunted when it lost already his antlers. And the proper hit zone would be around here. Like normally on the head of the eyes and close to the ears. So let's see. So I chose a few different spots. I hit it here, then here, and one here where I wanted to test. I think now we can't cut it open now because the moose head is frozen. So we first need to defrost it to see where the bullets are. Okay, the moose was now thawing for some time. And of course, most of it is still frozen, but I hope that that outer layer is a little bit defrosted. So let's start with that shot here. Try to get it open. Can also connect to the other one. You see how deep I get there with a knife, and there is only resistance because the brain is still frozen. But the upper one is interesting because on the footage it looked a little bit like the bullet changed away and traveled along the bone instead of penetrating it. Let's check the third one. Okay, so here the bullet also went through. I can feel the resistance on both sides. So the knife is in that bullet hole. Unfortunately, it's very hard to see anything. Like it's more a matter of feeling the hole. Okay, so it seemed like the third shot, which hit up here, was not penetrating the bone because the bone is here pretty flat already. So it came against the bone and traveled somewhere up under the skin. The main shot, the main test is here, and there I clearly can feel the hole in the bone with the knife in all dimensions. So there it clearly penetrated the bone. And the third one here, I can also feel the hole with a knife. So finally, I have 3 last points to tell. Shooting big game animals with 22 LR reliably is possible. And we see that on the cow shooting on meadows, which is done in a lot of countries, and there they use 22 LR's subsonic suppressed rifles. And it works very, very reliable. So if you know where you need to hit on the brain region, the bullet penetrates easily through the bone if you are not too far on the sides where it could slip away from the bone and travel under the skin. The second thing is, when you look at tests from the 22 LR and subsonic suppressed shooting on ballistic gel, which is like similar to normal tissue, you see that the bullets also penetrate easily up to 30 centimeters deep. When you compare that to an expanding .308 Winchester, it normally also doesn't go further than 55 centimeters. That is because of the much higher cross-sectional load. So you see that the 22 LR, even if it has so much less energy, it still goes very deep into the tissue. Of course, the tests are mostly performed at 50 meters or 50 yards. But still you see that the difference to a .308 Winchester, which is expanding, is not very high. And the third thing is, and that's unfortunately something negative for the 22 LR and something very serious, most 22 LR cartridges have pure lead bullets without any tombac plating or even lead-free. There are very few lead-free options, and as I said, they normally don't have a mantle, so you have to deal directly with the lead. They are normally greased, and I think the main reason is to prevent direct contact with the lead and also to prevent that the lead is corroding and losing particles, because a very big problem with lead is that it's extremely toxic, also in extremely small doses. So you really don't want to get lead in your body. You get very, very fast symptoms of intoxication, and also the lethal dose is very low for basically all livings. Lead is very much underestimated as a poisonous and toxic material. So not only the touching of the lead can be a problem, also when you shoot it, you have a lot of lead abrasion. You have the lead abrasion in the barrel, you get the lead dust out from the barrel while shooting because particles get scrubbed off during running in the barrel. The silencer is full of small and fine lead sand. So when you handle 22 LRs, you have basically the lead everywhere, and also of course when you hit something, the lead is there. So when I hunt with the 22 LR, I only shoot on the head of animals to prevent that any venison gets a lot of lead contamination through the blood circulation or also through direct spreading. And that should be taken very serious, and I hope that in the future, it doesn't really look like, but I hope that the manufacturers bring out more lead-free 22 bullets, or at least a plated, or with a real mantle, with a real tombac mantle. The problem is, I think that most likely would destroy the huge price advantage of the 22 LR, because when you look at the price, the bullet of a 22 LR, like even in high-priced countries, normally the cheapest goes to around 5 to 10 cents. And compared to all other ammunition, that's very cheap, and that also makes it very nice to shoot it, because you don't have that bad feeling of shooting euros around. Yeah. You're warmly welcome to share your experience with hunting with a 22 LR in the comments below. Or for example, if you are a cow farmer and you shoot the cows on the meadow, you're warmly welcome to share your experience, because what I know from them directly and what I saw is that it works flawlessly. I could imagine that the cows they shoot, the bones around the brain are not as big as from the moose, but still they are a pretty huge animal and normally even more heavy than the moose, and it works without any problem. So the 22 LR as a hunting weapon has to be taken very serious. Hopefully you liked the video and enjoyed it, and see you next time. Hey, pa.